Thanks for checking out GuardiansOfTheGreenBeret.com. Today we present Dominic Albanese. He's claimed to be a Green Beret in 5th Group in Vietnam for decades and had actually infiltrated a few Special Forces forums on social media. About a month ago, the Special Forces Association asked us to get his records when he was trying to join a chapter down in Florida. He kept postponing producing those records, and now we see why. Records show he was reduced in rank 3 times, had a total time in service of less than 1 year and 11 months, had a court-martial. He claims in the phone call that we had with him that we're on the wrong guy, but on multiple occasions during the call, all he does is confirm we're on the right guy. Because in messages before the phone call, he sent us a bio that said 14th Aviation, 5th Group, Okinawa. He also confirmed he was reduced in rank 3 times. He said he'd like to claim to be an E9 because he was an E3 3 different times, which is yet another lie. He did become an E3, but then went down to E1, E2, E1 again. But so without further ado, here is Dominic Albanese. You could fast forward about 10 minutes through all his bull crap about training and missions if you want to, but it's interesting, and because it's all fictitious. And in about the 10-minute mark of the phone call, which I don't know what that would be after this introduction, we confront him with the fact that we have his records, and you could hear by the disappointment in his voice and the dead time between answers that he knows the gig is up, but he still doesn't really admit it. He says we're on the wrong guy. He gives us a service number, and we immediately confirm with NPRC that the service number he gave us was not in use at that time. So without further ado, here's Dominic, and check out all the other work we do at GuardiansOfTheGreenBeret.com. Out here.
Oh,
Hey, what's up, brother?
well, I'm just waiting to do the interview.
I'll just start and I'll say this is a recorded interview with Dominic Albanese for our shit. See, I had this all rehearsed.
Okay.
I'll say today we have an recorded oral interview with Dominic Albanese, who served in Special Forces in the early 60s. And without further ado, welcome Dominic. And then we'll go into the interview.
Okay.
All right. Ready? Here we go.
Yeah.
Today, we have a recorded interview with Dominic Albanese, who served in Special Forces in the early 60s. Welcome, Dominic.
Thank you. And I guess my best bet would be to start out by saying all I can do here is honor the regiment and give memory eternal to the Special Forces troops I served with, being that I was only 18, 19, 20, and some of them were in their mid-40s, and that's 1962 to 1966. So I do believe about 90% of the guys I served with are gone now.
I see you mention an individual named Maddie a lot. Did you guys enter the service on some type of buddy system? I see where you mentioned you went through, did you go to basic together and airborne and ranger school, or did you go to language school? And I see you guys did a whole lot of training together.
Well, what happened was I met him on a bus coming down from Fort Dix. He had already been through basic, and I was just finishing up intermediate speed radio operator training, and we were on our way to Bedford jump school. And after jump school, we both got thrown out of ranger school for fighting and not with each other. But he convinced me to to sign up for 2 more years so that we could go to what now is called qualification. But then they were trying to get as many guys in as they could. There were a lot of guys laterally transferred from division, especially some World War II and some Korea vets, like both my team sergeant and the senior weapons sergeant, Carl Pratt and George Richards, were both World War II and Korea vets. And when I took the test, the written test, I got jammed by a couple of field grade officers. I can't remember if it was 2 majors or a major and a lieutenant colonel, but they wanted to know how I cheated on the test. And I told him, "What are you talking about?" He said, "There's no way at your age with a GED high school you could get these kind of marks." You will. I read a lot of books. And they both kind of laughed, and they gave me another test. So when I took the second test and I passed it, they said, "We're sending you, but if you wash out, you're going right to the 173rd. And I said, "Okay, whatever." And I went for 13 weeks. Then they sent me to Fort Ord, California for language training. And humorously enough, the guy I call Matty, his real name was John Gallivan Madison. And there's a little known fact that a lot of guys, about time they were either due to ETS or they were about to DEROS, they got paid a visit from the CIA. And a lot of them got a lateral transfer where they didn't have to ETS, but they were carried on the military books as, I don't know if they were called consultants or advisors or what they were called. But Matty wound up spending almost 30 years in Central America, supposedly as a computer salesman, but he was actually a spook. Again, the honor of the regiment and the fact that we were called special, where nowadays they ascribe special to dog food or other stuff. And when I went in, it was only a year and a half after Kennedy had given us the Green Beret. And I didn't get my beret at Bragg because I was in California, and I met up with the guys from my group at Travis Air Force Base, and we were all getting ready to fly to Okinawa. And that time, the CIA and Special Forces were already in Laos, and they were advising the Royal Army against the Pathet Lao. But the CIA had a setup there with both Air America and these containers full of commo gear. The best stuff you could imagine. More modern than our Prick 13s or 15s. I actually had an old World War II 49 set to send code with. And they had such a better setup where instead of a leg key, they had, and I've seen pictures of them, I didn't get one, they had this little table-mounted board where you could what we used to call exercise your fist. Yeah. And some of us could recognize each other by what we call the fist, how you sent code. Yeah. And being that I've been trained to speak Vietnamese, I could actually send code in Vietnamese. Not as well as I could in English, but it would come when they started to build up the big headquarters and headquarters company for the 5th Special Forces Group in Nha Trang. There were 3 A teams. I was on 131, and I think there was 135 or 136 on both sides of the headquarters company, all the surrounding areas, and we used to patrol up on the hills. And one of the big hills was named On Chin Suk, and Han Chin Suk. And what we did was we were looking for trails or caves or any other setups that the NVA, which at that time, they pretty much, the brass in Saigon, denied that they were NVA. They said it was just a bunch of pajama-wearing radicals. One of the biggest mistakes in that war was to underestimate our enemy.
Yeah, when those guys met you in California, to circle back, you said you didn't have your Green Beret. I don't understand that. You'd already
They gave it to me. And in fact, my team commander, Captain Luck, who retired as a general, handed it to me. And both Villarreal and Madison were teasing me. Yeah, we did all the work and you get the reward. You better shape up, fat boy. I took a lot of teasing because I was the youngest one. In a conversation I had with one of our Medal Honor winner brothers, I asked him if he remembered me, and all he said was, I think I remember Pratt used to call you diapers. I also had a smart attitude. I got that. I made some allusions to it in some of the comments in our brotherhood, but there were a couple of times when Top pulled me over and he said, if you don't put a sock in it, I'm going to put my boot in it. You better shape up. And, I would make wisecracks and I know it came really from more being afraid and trying to act like I wasn't afraid. Yeah. Hoorah! And sometimes out on patrol, I was lucky because I was the commo guy and I didn't have to walk in the front or I didn't have to walk in the back. I was always in the middle.
Well, there you go.
We had runners from both point and end. If somebody saw an ambush or somebody saw something or an airstrike was needed or we needed to call a medevac or whatever. So I was always in a pretty safe place. A couple of times.
Yeah. When you and Maddie,
my mud.
When you and Maddie got when you and Maddie got removed from Ranger School, I'm trying to circle back to all these things because I'm sure people want to hear that. He went to Bragg and you went to language school, or did you both go through what was training called before the Q course?
Well, I guess it was either 26 weeks full for some MOSs and 13 weeks for commo and 13 weeks for medics who then got sent down to Fort Sam Houston. And that's when they had what they called the dog farm. Yeah. And they had to learn how to deal with bullet wounds. But there were a couple of actually non-airborne, fully indoctrinated to Special Forces medics who were pretty much like they had dropped out of med school to join the military. And we had one, his name was Darce, and we called him Heavy Drop. And the Vietnamese called him Bak Sim Mok, which means Dr. Fat. But he could do surgery. He was an amazing guy. When we got to the Mountain Yard camp, they found kids that had rickets and whooping cough and all kinds of stuff. And he cleaned them up. In Bang San, he became like the local hero, the village elder. Yeah. And the women used to bring him presents and feed him. And he sure did like to eat. But he was not a jumper. He was not airborne qualified. Okay. And we used to tease him.
When did you go through the training?
1962, like December of 62 to February of 63. They were really trying to build up the force. And there wasn't... okay. I left in April of 1965 when the 7th Cavalry, the 3rd Marines, in fact, I was sitting in a restaurant in Da Nang out on the river, and I saw the LSTs coming up the river to Red Beach, where the Marines would land in April of '65.
Brother,
Even the helicopter door gunners, back when I was there, they weren't in an aviation battalion. They were TDY out of the 25th Infantry in Hawaii. I don't think people knew that, given the propaganda of the day, that we would just go in there and clean that up and establish this new government and everything would be okay.
here's where...
I'm not making a criticism, just an observation that we completely underestimated a group of people for 1,700 years had driven every invader out of their country.
Here's where the conversation's really going to go sideways.
Okay.
I have your records.
Say it again.
I have your records.
Yeah. And?
You were not airborne. You were a company clerk with 5th Group for 2 months. You got reduced in rank 3 different times when you were in Okinawa, and you were court-martialed in October of '65 and got out at E1.
That's not true. I did get 2 Article 15s and a court-martial for disobeying a direct order.
I have your duty assignments. We submitted records twice. You were a company clerk. Then you were a driver. You were with the 14th Aviation for 1 day, 5th Group as a company clerk for 2 months, back to 14th Aviation, 7th Aviation. Then you went 173rd for a very short time. Then you went to Okinawa. And that's when stuff really went down. And you were reduced a couple more times. And I can only assume you were in a confinement facility or something, because your good time does not jive with your total time. There's about 5 months or so missing. It shows you served 1 year, 10 months, and a number of days.
Well, I'm not understanding that at all, because I never was a clerk, and I graduated from radio training in Fort Dix in 1963. There's 2 other Dominic Albaneses. Is the service, is the SSAN you have, no, the serial number you have, US 51509
Hang on.
519
515 09
09 519
519. Let me repeat that. US 515 09 519.
Yes.
Okay. I will do an emergency request so we get this right, and I sure don't mean to offend you or piss you off, but we asked twice.
No, not at all.
Yeah, the Dominic Albanese that lives in your location, this is what came back, and it's eerily similar, because this guy, the Dominic, with your, what's your middle name?
Anthony.
Yep, Dominic Anthony Albanese, with your date of birth, the same dates of service. He also served in Fort Dix, like you mentioned, served in 5th Group, like you mentioned, and went to Okinawa, like you mentioned, all at the same time, but he had a totally different life in the military than you claim. National Personnel Records Center looked twice.
Okay.
This is what we're going to have to go with.
Well, all I can tell you is that there's 3 Albanese in the 173rd, another Dominic and a Lewis. And Lewis was my cousin who got the Medal of Honor on Hamburger Hill. The other Dominic, I never knew who he was, but he was airborne, as I was. Some of the stuff doesn't make sense.
No, because you were, and this guy, he was also in the 173rd and 5th Group. You were a driver in the 173rd for under a month. So everything, let me see, Company A, Admin, 173rd, APO, 96250 from May 4th until May 26th. So everything you're talking about, we just have a different idea of what you did. You switched to being a driver then.
Wow. I don't know how that happened, and I guess maybe we'll just have to cancel this and wait till that gets straightened out. I would love to know how, as a clerk typist, I got a CIB with the 5th Special Forces Group. I'd love to know how that happened.
We've probably had about 5 or 6 clerks that mysteriously get a CIB. That's not unheard of. But you're not going to just come clean and admit. I mean, I have the times you were reduced in rank that kind of correspond with what you told me in a private message. You were at E3 in 12 October 64. You went down to an E2 27 March 65, down to an E1 16 August 65, back up to an E2
Wow.
2 October 60. Yeah, wow, that were correct. Then down to an E1 10 November 65, and you were court-martialed October 30th of 65. Your total good time in service was like 1 year, 10 months, and some days. So can we agree that we're correct? You served 1 year, 10 months, and 23 days good time. And you were in 5th group for just a day or so under, or maybe 2 months exactly. I'm
So
sorry.
how did I ETS in March? How did I get out of the military in March of 66 if you got me out in October of 65?
That's when you were court-martialed. We have you out in your DD-214, and thank you for confirming we're on the correct DD-214. Your DD-214 has you getting out 17 March 66. Your 2-1 says 18 March 66, handwritten.
Huh. Well, I don't know what to say about that.
Well,
I did what I did. I know I was where I was, and I was never a clerk other than operating a teletype machine in the time sometimes.
Well,
send green flash papers
all right.
down to Saigon and back to PACCOM. And I don't know. I guess I don't know. I don't know what else to say.
Well,
I think the records are confused, but I never claimed to be a hero. I never said I was any big deal, and I don't understand any of those other MOSs. I always thought I was an 051, which was intermediate speed radio operator.
Okay, that helps out a lot. You actually started, that again confirms we're on the correct person. On 15, you entered basic training 2 December 63, not 62 as you earlier said. In AIT, you indeed were an 051 from February 15th, 64 to April 4th. And that's when you switched to company clerk.
I don't know what else to say.
Well,
I'm sorry.
You could say you're sorry that you're pretending to be a Green Beret.
I'm sorry.
You could apologize for pretending to be a Green Beret. You weren't even airborne.
I don't know what to say about that.
Well, my friend,
I had my own records, but I don't. I threw them all away.
Well, of course you did.
Yes, I'm going to call some people who I know knew me. See, like Randy Forsythe and John Yardbrough, Underwood, those guys all knew me, but they're dead now.
Well, of course. You cannot say these are wrong. You have corroborated these records too many other ways, and NPRC, they didn't look once, they looked twice. Okay? So, I mean, I would almost suggest that you just say, hey, you got me. Because I think you and I both know.
All right. Thank you.
All right, out here. So we triple checked on him, and we sent yet another FOIA for a deep dive to receive any and all available information that's releasable to the public, and we'll get that added to the article eventually when it comes in. Usually the deep dives take a long time, but beyond doubt, he's not a Green Beret. You can check out all the other articles we have on our website at guardiansofthegreenberet.com. We'll leave a link in the description. Out here.